Mantra, I will request you to join as well. Asatoma Sadgamaya. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya. You can repeat. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya. Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. This couplet, a mantra we say, it means asata, from untrue. Take us to what is truth. Asata ma, take me, ma, to sat. Tamasa, from tamas, darkness. Jyoti gamaya, lead me to light. Gamaya means lead to. Mrityo ma, ma here stands for me. You kindly lead me from death, Amrita, towards immortality. So we in our philosophy ever trying to reach the infinite. However, caught in the mortal chain of the body and the mind that we are. Classes like these remind us of the path that we ought to take. I am indebted to this Vivekananda Society, Vedanta Society of Chicago, for giving me this opportunity to avail of this Sunday class. And my topic will be Essence of the Gita. Since Chicago is all the more known for the heroics of Swami Vivekananda, it was his exploits here at the World's Parliament of Religions that has taken us who were from India or are from India to have a firm grounding in our philosophy and an identity of our own. I would first start the Gita, discussion of the Gita, from the first lecture that Swamiji delivered, only excerpt from that lecture. Swamiji says that in that very first lecture, my thanks also to some of the speakers on this platform who, referring to the delegates from the Orient, that is on 11th September 1893, have told you that these men from far-off nations may well claim the honor of bearing to different lands the idea of toleration. Then he goes a pitch higher. He says, I am proud to belong to a religion which has taught the world both tolerance and universal acceptance. We believe not only in universal toleration, but we accept all religions as true. The present convention, that is the Parliament of Religions in 1893, which is one of the most august assemblies ever held, is in itself a vindication, he says, a declaration to the world of the wonderful doctrine preached in the Gita. So in his very first lecture, he has quoted from the Gita. Whosoever comes to me through whatsoever form, I reach him. All men are struggling through paths which in the end lead to me. Then he quotes those words which are so prophetic and relevant even today. Sectarianism, bigotry, and its horrible descendant, fanaticism, have long possessed this beautiful earth. They have filled the earth with violence, drenched it often and often with human blood, destroyed civilization, and sent whole nations to despair. That was so many years earlier, right? So what does this verse from the Gita mean? It is actually a free translation from the main verse, which says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante. Can you kindly repeat? Ye yatha mam prapadyante tans tathaiva bhajamyaham tans tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanuvartante manusha partha sarvasha. The main verse says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante. Yatha, by whatsoever path. Prapadyante is to take refuge in. By whatsoever path, that is whatsoever religions. Tan tatha eva, accordingly. Bhajami aham. Bhajami is from bhajdhatu, to show compassion, to show grace. Bhajami aham. And then he says, those words of unity, Krishna in the Gita, Mama vartma anuvartante. Vartma means path, the way that we cross over. Mama vartma anuvartante. All are following the different ways. Partha sarvasha. Mama vartma anuvartante partha sarvasha. All men are taking different ways probably that finally end up in the same Ishvara. I was asking for suggestions from Maharaj Ishakmanji before the lecture. He was telling me, you insist on this, discuss this Samanvaya in the Gita. It is such a wonderful book of Samanvaya that the message rings across centuries, you see. So when Swamiji gives this historic address, he cannot but come back to this book to get the main spring of the Hindu philosophy, which discusses unity, which tells that the paths lead up to the same goal. Well, that's nice. Everything leads to the same goal. But are we behaving as such? We aren't, right? We often stand as a divided whole. The question is, how do you account for this diversity in beings? So it's not that Hinduism washes everything under the carpet, dusts it below the carpet. It doesn't. It also tries to look at the multiplicity in our lives, multiplicity in religious lives. But nevertheless, there is a wonderful basic philosophy which discusses the basic consciousness of human being. So Swamiji, in those addresses, especially at the address on 27th September, which some of the biographers have said, that he practically gave a new charter on Hinduism. Hinduism has so many diverse paths that we who call ourselves Hindu can be perplexed if someone asks us, who are the gods in your religion? What are the different paths? So here is a person who sets out to tell us what could be a common charter on Hinduism. This Swamiji had attempted in that 27th September lecture. So at the very outset he tells us that, well, beneath this unity is the consciousness of oneness. So let us look at his words, then I'll go to the Gita once again. Here I stand, Swamiji says, and I shut my eyes. and try to conceive my existence. I. What is the idea before me? All of us, if you try to do that, close our eyes. What is the idea before me? Swamiji, ask. The idea of a body. I have seen my body in the mirror in the morning when I brushed my teeth. So my idea of the body is very much there. The idea of the Atman, the self, the consciousness isn't really there. So that's the reality. Am I then, Swamiji asks, nothing but a combination of material substances? The Vedas declare no. The Hindu philosophy says no. You are beyond that. Then he continues, I am a spirit living in a body. I am not the body. Here I am in this body, it will fall, but I shall go on living. I had also a past. The soul was not created, for creation means a combination, which means a certain future dissolution. So I come back to the Gita. The Gita says, what is the nature of this Atman that he speaks about? What he said just now was that we are not merely the body, but beyond that, beyond the body and the mind, is an entity which in the philosophy we say as Atman. What is the nature of Atman? To tell us about the Atman, there is the part of what is known as denial, neti, neti. So look at this verse. Acchedoyam adajhoyam. Yes. Acchedoyam adajhoyam akledya ashosha evacha akledya ashosha evacha nitya sarvagata sthanu nitya sarvagata sthanu Achaloyam sanatana, achaloyam sanatana. See this method of denial, you can see, right? Achedya, which cannot be cut into pieces, from chidhatu, achedya. Adajya, which cannot be put to the fire, adajya. Right? We put our fire extinguishers everywhere. So this is adajya. Adajya, achedya, adajya, akledya, which cannot be made wet by water. Ashosha evacha, neither cannot be sucked by wind, right? You cannot use an exhaust fan to suck out the Atman, right? Akledya, ashosha evacha. So these are what is known as the denial, neti, neti. Nevertheless, it also tries to tell you what the Atman is. That is the method of, while the first one was denial, the second one is an affirmative attempt. What is it then? Nitya sarvagata sthanu. Nitya is ever present. Sarvagata, everywhere it is there, right? Sthanu, immobile. Sthadhatu means to stay put. Sthan. Achala ayam sanatana. Achala, which doesn't move. Ayam sanatana. In discussing what sanatana is, the commentators, they have said, you see, especially the commentator Shankaracharya, it is to the credit of Shankaracharya that the import of the Gita became clearer. Earlier, the main text of the Gita, a small book, with merely, how many? 700 shlokas, right? So it's, well, as small as you can put it into your own pocket. But Shankaracharya brought it out from the main text of the Mahabharata. And then he gave the underlying philosophical significance of the Gita. So look at this last part, Sanatana. The Bhashyakara, the commentator will say, you see, Sanatana means which had existed yesterday will exist tomorrow as well. Well, is there anything else in the world that has this property? He says nothing. Everything undergoes a change. Yesterday your mind was somehow dull, inert, angry. Today as you wake up early in the morning, it is fresh again, right? So your mind has undergone a change. Last day, you were having a cold and fever, so your body was down. Today after the medicine, it is up and doing again. So the body is undergoing changes. The mind too is undergoing changes, right? So there are no other articles, things in the world which do not change. In the Vedanta it says, you see, anything that is created has been combined to be formed must undergo dissolution at a point of time. Anything which is combined must break away and go back to its main elements. This is dissolution. But this Atman was never created. And so, by the same logic, can never be dissolved either. But how can we realize this Atman? The method of dissolution has been said earlier, right? By denial. Anything which dissolves undergoes changes. But that which never undergoes a changes is neither dissolved either. So by this logic, Vedanta has a lot of logic. It's not merely bhakti, I tell you. These argumentations really prepares the basis of Hindu philosophy. This is what Shankaracharya and others have done. So with this we get to the idea of consciousness, right? So what is consciousness? Consciousness actually operates at different levels. We say body consciousness, right? So Vedanta says, you see, when you are deeply in sleep, it's known as Shushupti. Su is good, Shupti is sleep. When you are in deep sleep, then even when people are crying next door, you can't hear, isn't it? So in deep sleep, it's different from the waking state. So the Vedanta says, you see, there are different states of the body also. One is waking, Jagrat. Another is sleeping. Another is deep sleep, somewhat different from the mere sleeping. Say in the early morning hours, all of us here, we have this experience. We suddenly have a hint of the world around us. We are not fully awake, but barely we are having a feel of the world. And then we open our eyes. Initially, we don't feel like getting out of our bed. We like to drowse a little in our beds. Be in the world of make-believe that dream creates. But we can't do this for long. But even before that, the Vedanta says, for a large part of what we call sleep is the Shushupti avastha. What happens during Shushupti? Wonderful discussion in the Vedanta on these different states, right? It says, you see, during the Shushupti state, you are not awake, right? So you are not in the Jagrat avastha. Similarly, in the dream state, you were conjuring up. Tyagarupananda says, Maharaj is discussing the Tyagarupananda. Tyagarupananda says, you see, you have nourished different ambitions in your mind. Probably many of them were not satisfied. So these come up in the dreams. You have wishful thinking in the dreams, right? The Vedanta says, you see, there you suddenly become a king. You have wonderful objects of enjoyments. So our mind at a subconscious level nurtures these ideas. And lo, suddenly you find them appearing in the dream. You are not prepared for this at all. But one thing, much of the dream that you have seen quickly disappears with the morning sun, right? You just try to remember the dream last night, probably you can recollect them. But most of the dreams of the earlier days, you have already forgotten by now. So dreams are like the vapor that you see around, right? They quickly disappear. So Jagrat, Swapna, Shushupti. Shushupti is the state that you don't dream either, right? When we discuss it among our devotees, they say, man, what is that really? Don't we dream always? Vedanta says, you see, sometimes we wake up in the morning and say, Sukham aham aswapsam. We wake up and say, wonderful sleep we have had. So if someone asks you, well, do you remember what you saw in the deep sleep? Then you will scratch your head and say, no, I don't remember anything. I had a fine, nourishing, refreshing sleep, that is all. The body had perfect rest. But how the mind was functioning, I am totally oblivious of that. So the mind is in a state of slumber, as it were. The Vedanta says it goes back to its causal state, to the main causes. Meaning, it says, you see, in the dream state even, the mind has some of the causes manifest, like the germination of a small seed. And in the waking state, these small seeds come to fruition all the more. How? Because the chinta, the thought that you nurture, those only are put into physical forms, right? Many of the thoughts that you had nurtured, those only are carried out the next day. Probably not all of them, but they had their seeds in your thoughts earlier, right? So with Jagrata, then Swapna, then Shushupti, then comes the fourth one, Turiya. Turiya state says, well, in the Shushupti, you come every day nearest to your Atman. Of course, unknowingly. When you get up from deep sleep again you go back to the old cycle of Jagrat, Swapna, and then third one, Shushupti, right? You like being in this state. If someone tells you that you don't go to the Jagrat state again, you will be sorry, right? You know the world round, you know your relatives, you know your objects of enjoyments. Those are the props on which you stand on. So Vedanta says, you see, these are the upadhi. It coins a wonderful word. They are the adjuncts on which your existence stands. Among the upadhis, the important ones are the name and the form. Every one of us, we have a name, right? Every one of us have a form, body, form, right? You see, suppose you address a crowd and tell everyone, let us all sit straight, suppose, right? None of us really are obliged. But if you pick up a person and say, well, Keshav, you are there sitting in the corner, why don't you sit straight? So immediately it's like a hammer, right? The name is like a hammer. Because you associate yourself with your name. Name is vital for you. Vedanta says name and form, nama and rupa. These are the most important components of your earthly existence, right? Although it speaks of the Atman beyond name and form, wonderful analysis has been there of this relative world, of this existential world also. So unless you analyze this existential world properly, you won't be able to understand the deep consciousness that lies beyond them both, of the body and the mind, right? So let me take up another verse, right? It says, you can repeat. Natat suryo bhati atat suryo bhati na chandra tarakam nema vidyuto bhanti nema vidyuto bhanti kutoyam agni tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. Well, some of you know these verses, really, right? So, Upanishads, the essence of the Upanishads are supposed to be contained in the Gita. There is a wonderful couplet which says, you see, consider all these Upanishads as cows. And if you mix those cows, you have the essence. What is it? The milk. So you see, there was a cowherd boy, his name was Krishna. He mixed those cows, the Upanishads, and gave you the essence, the Gita. So the Gita is supposed to be the essence of the Upanishads. You have many Upanishads actually. You can get lost in the maze of Upanishads. There are so many Upanishads. So reading the Bhagavad Gita, in a sense, takes you to an action. You read plenty of philosophy, but you cannot solve the problem of your life, right? You have the quarrels in the office, you have the differences in the family, you have the body ache, and after going out from the lecture hall, you have the same stomach problem, right? The question is, how does this philosophy help you in solving your problems? So it is here that Bhagavad Gita is a very practical book, right? Why is it practical? Just see the background. Here is a person, Arjuna, after much discussion, the Pandavas had decided on going out for an all-out war against their close relatives, Kaurava. The Pandavas are just, honest. They are still unsure whether this war is deserving, just. So this vacillation about what action is to be taken continues even at the 11th hour. So much so that Pandavas and Kauravas both have assembled on the war field of Kurukshetra, right? And they were about to start the war. The conch shells have been blown, which signal the start of the war. And at that last moment, this is how the Bhagavad Gita book starts. Krishna, the charioteer, and a friend, is asked by Arjuna, the best of the warriors in the Pandava clan, to take his chariot between the two armies. Why? Gives a wonderful reason also. He says, you see, many of the persons won't live after this war. So let me have a full survey of those alive, right? Just before an exam, we like to look through the whole syllabus of the books again, right? Last minute revision. This is what Arjuna was doing. But often it so happens that for a student, when he sees the huge volume of the syllabus, he suddenly gets puzzled, okay? He loses nerves. He says, I'm unprepared. I won't be able to appear for the exams, right? When we were younger days, in our younger days, we would often hear a verb, drop the idiots. He has given a drop. That is, he has bypassed the examination that year, right? So Arjuna is really prepared for that only. And he gives wonderful excuses also. He said, you see, is it proper to kill one's own relatives and indulge in a war? What will the later generations say? They will say that because of the greed for wealth and kingdom, They had even killed their own relatives. When you read this logic in the first chapter of the Gita, I tell you, you can almost feel that Arjuna is right. Right? You can feel that what is wrong about it? Arjuna is saying the correct thing. But Krishna is intelligent, right? He goes on advising Arjuna only after allowing Arjuna to tell his whole doubts, convey his doubts. Then he gives a warrior call. Swamiji was very fond of this line, right? So you can repeat. Klaibyam masmagama partha, klaibyam masmagama partha, naitat tvai upapadyate, naitat tvai upapadyate, kshudram hridayadaur valyam, kshudram hridayadaur valyam, Tyagtvottishta parantapa, Tyagtvottishta parantapa. What does he say here? He gives a tremendous scolding to Arjuna actually. Right? Arjuna is favorite of all the teachers, and yet Krishna, his friend, gives him such a spanking, he says he is an imbecile. Kliba, he says, right? Klaibya maspagamah path. Such a weak statement doesn't befit you. Na eta tvai upapadyate. It doesn't befit you. Give up this faint-heartedness. Shudram hridaya daurbalyam. Tyaktva, give up. Uttishta, rise up. He parantapa. Tapa means causing heat, right? Parantapa is the warrior who has scorched others, enemies earlier. And now, at the last hour, he is something nervous. Krishna first gives him very laukika logic. Laukika means common logic, right? He tells Arjuna, you see, you must be ashamed, you see. He tells in the Gita. You only invited these people to fight for you. Those who were fighting for the Pandavas. On the other side are the Kauravas. So the Pandava sympathizers and the Kaurava sympathizers all have been invited by the two main groups, right? Some decided to join the Pandava, some the Kauravas. So Krishna gives us first a common logic, everyday logic. He says, you see, these people have all come to fight for you. And you must not set a bad example before them. See, example. What a common logic. He says, you see, you must not set an example which can be confusing in front of them. Probably, you might have had great ideas in your mind. You talk of justice. You talk of killing your relatives being a sin. But I can tell you, don't confuse these people. They had come here looking up to you. You are the leaders. Now suddenly they hear you are not going to fight. What will they think? They are prepared with their bows, arrows, swords.